What's going on, Badger fans? Let's talk a little bit more about Tackett Curtis from Brian Smith's perspective. What are the Badgers getting with that uber talented linebacker that's coming in from USC? Plus, thoughts on a 2025 target that is a big time potential player out of Ohio. All that and more in today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning into this. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Let's just jump right into it. We got Brian Smith joining the show. I want to start with Tackett Curtis. So this is a guy Badger fans have been following for 2 years because they almost got him last year in a very tight recruiting battle. That's one of the reasons he's going to Wisconsin now, is because they laid the groundwork last year. What are your thoughts on Tackett Curtis? Let's start with the player.
Number one, he's a kid that I had seen as a junior. He's from Manny, Louisiana, Northwest Louisiana, Podunkville. But they had 2 or 3 kids at this little tiny school, this random, which is typical Louisiana, that could go play for anybody. And he was a guy that could run sideline to sideline, kind of an old school linebacker, but with modern speed. And he's got a little bit of length to him and very instinctual as well. I think he's better against the run like most guys are, but he's not too bad against the pass either. Had a fumble recovery, had a forced fumble, had 40 tackles this year. He started at SC. And yes, I know they're garbage on defense, but still hard to start as a freshman at a Power 5 school. I don't care which one it is. So he came in, started at SC and did well, and I'm not surprised. He had an offer from pretty much every school in the country before his senior year of high school, and it wasn't by coincidence. Bama wanted him. You know what I mean? Like Georgia would have taken him. A&M would have taken him. So A&M and those kind of schools don't do that for fun. He can play in any scheme. He could be your middle in a 4-3. He could be your outside linebacker in a 3-4. He is the definition of versatility. I am very curious because the Badgers run the ultimate flex defense, 3-3, 3-4, 4-3. They do all kinds of stuff. How they're going to move him around, or are they going to be, at least in his first year, okay, this is your spot. We're just going to let you focus, and then we'll let you grow. I don't know how they're going to do it, but he could be a pass rusher too. Again, very twitchy kid, got some length to him. 3rd down and 6, if he lined up at a 2-point stance outside the defensive end, it would not be surprising. He has the ability to do that as well. So again, you're spending 1 scholarship, but really you're getting 2 or 3 players. By the time he leaves, it's probably 3 because he can play so many roles in Fickell's defense that it makes it so much easier. He's a depth piece when he's not even on the field because if somebody gets hurt or whatever, he can go in there and fill another role. I'm just curious how quickly that evolves because they're not the easiest defense to learn, but once they do, Wisconsin's going to be a pain.
Yeah, let me ask you this because USC fans, obviously, he was a big get for, you mentioned anybody in the country he would have been a get. Fans got excited about. USC got excited about him, and then it felt like they were a little frustrated with what they saw out of him. I always felt like they wanted more, right? And it feels like if you're expecting a freshman linebacker to come in and save your defense, like he started for a reason, but that defensive system felt broken. I don't know how much you take out of maybe a year where he was a little inconsistent, but starting as a freshman seems like a pretty impressive result there.
Regardless of who you are, Mike Singletary with the Bears in the 80s, whoever it is, if your guys up front in front of you are not pushing the pile, you're going to be mitigated. And USC's defensive line was a sieve. So I don't want to hear anything out of USC fans. The guy you need to bitch at is Lincoln Riley for keeping the same head defensive coordinator forever. Lincoln Riley is the most overrated coach in college football by a mile. Everybody loves that offense, but it doesn't help the defense because they don't hit enough in practice. He doesn't know how to hire consistently. He finally did get a good coordinator, the guy from UCLA. Good for him. But now are they going to practice the way they should and take on guys in practice? No, they won't do it. They will not maximize. We're going to see a different player because Wisconsin's staff is better than USC's overall. The offense and the defense doing practice is very important. I believe Fickell, because of who he played with and the era he's from at Ohio State, not real worried about him being physical, and that'll fit Tackett well. He'll take a jump up in coaching. I guarantee it. He's the kind of kid everybody wanted. Without even asking, I know one of the reasons all these coaches I talk to, he's coachable. one thing to be an athlete, it's another to maximize your physical traits. And that's why I talked about Tackett playing outside, playing inside, 4-3, 3-4. They'll figure it out with him, and he'll get a really good opportunity at Wisconsin. It's a great fit because he's one of the few guys that I think can take on those multiple roles and play in a complex defense like the Badgers run.
Let me ask you this. I always find this interesting. If he had come to Wisconsin last year, Badger fans would have lost their minds, right? It would have been one of the biggest recruiting wins in program history. You get him a year later, and it feels like the shine is off just a little bit. How should Badger fans look at this from a recruiting win standpoint? It almost feels like buying the Range Rover, Land Rover from a year ago, right? Going to the car lot and buying the car that's 1 year old that a year ago you would have lost your mind about.
That's a pretty good comparison. It's the same kid. I would actually think that for him, it goes up because he's like, God, get me out of here. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to be coached. He didn't care what the jersey said. I just want to go somewhere where the coaches are consistent. He bought into the BS of going to LA. He's from a very small town in Louisiana. He was probably a kid that was bored out of his mind and wanted to go to a city school. I mean, LA is pretty easy to sell. I get it. But after being mistreated in terms of how he was coached and how the D-line played in front of him, he's probably like, you know what? Let's shift gears here. I know Wisconsin's got a staff that really wanted me. Let's go there. I will be shocked if by the middle of this next year, assuming he's healthy, Tackett Curtis is not one of the mainstays in the front seven. I don't know if he'll start or how they'll use him. Again, they've got a pretty complex scheme and all the different ways they can do things, but they could simplify it for him in one of their packages, a 3-3-5, whatever, where this is your gig. Third downs, whatever, and he'll be a mainstay. I hope for him that he can become a 1st and 10 linebacker for them, because when guys that run like Tackett can play on 1st and 10, and when teams go play action, it gives you a more versatile linebacker. That's the one thing Wisconsin has been susceptible to for years. They've always had good linebackers, but they weren't always the fastest guys. You can get beat in the middle of the field. Ohio State, teams like that, kill them. Tackett can run. He'll be able to carry a tight end over the middle a little better, help out on a receiver, etc. Again, versatility, man. If you're going to take a step up in the program, these are the kind of kids you got to get. We've talked about it from the first time I came on your show, and that is not changing today.
We have mentioned it once or twice, right? Athleticism, versatility, speed. We're going to talk about one of those guys coming up. We're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and finish up our talk on Tackett Curtis and the amount of linebackers Wisconsin brought in, and then move on to a really big 2025 cornerback target. We're going to do that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your program, your business. That's why you need LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the #1 source for all of your hiring needs. As a hiring manager, as someone looking for a job, listen, this is something I've used personally. It's something my company uses. They have great screening tools to keep basically the people that have no business interviewing for your job out of the door, right? And if you're not interviewing the people that have no business interviewing for your job, you're spending more time interviewing the people who are qualified to be there, right? And if you're saving time, you're saving money. If you're saving money, your business is better, your day is better, life is better. That's what LinkedIn is here to do. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends over at Jace Medical. I've talked about Jace Medical a lot. I'm a dad. I'm a family guy. I'm also a friend. I'm a neighbor, right? Be empowered to protect the people around you with Jace Medical. You get 5 life-saving antibiotics that can treat over 50 infections. It's fast. It's simple. They send you a case with instructions. You have a consultation with a pharmacy, so you know exactly what you're doing. There's no danger there. And if you get cut off from your CVS, your Walmart, your Walgreens, whatever it is, your Rite Aid, there's a storm, a power outage, there's a supply chain issue. Sometimes it's not even that you're getting cut off from where you need to get. It's those businesses aren't getting the supplies they need. Now you are empowered to take care of yourself, your family, your friends, your neighbors, everyone around you. Don't get caught unprepared. Be empowered to protect yourself and your family and your friends. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off. Use my code LOCKEDON at checkout on JaceMedical.com. That's JASCMedical.com. JASCMedical.com, using our code LOCKED ON. All right, let's get Brian back in here. I want to talk about something that I found really interesting with this, Brian. So the Badgers brought in six transfer linebackers this cycle, 6 of them. Tackett Curtis was the 6th. What's interesting to me is immediately after Tackett Curtis came on board as the 6th transfer linebacker, one of the linebackers, Josiah Galvin, transferred out. Is this just the? I mean, they were recruiting over guys in the same offseason. I mean, it's crazy to me as someone who grew up watching recruiting, but this is just where we're at now.
It's scheme, man. As I was talking about with Tackett a few minutes ago, you need versatility for this defense to operate at even a mid-level. They didn't really have that. Remember, just a few years ago, they were in the 3-4.
Yep.
They had a 260-pound inside linebacker. I mean, while that defense worked, it is the exception, not the rule. And this defense that they're in now is as far away from that as you can be. They need guys that can play multiple spots, and they need guys for packages. They're going to do that now. And they're still going to look like, I don't know what Michigan's going to happen. It's pretty obvious. Harbaugh's not going to be there, but Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, some of these teams that you play, definitely Minnesota, they're still going to run downhill. So you need some of that. It's a harder league to recruit to probably than any other because there's so many power teams, but the few teams that can really throw the ball, again, Ohio State, they put your linebackers in flux. So you need a lot of versatility, and they're just trying to cover their bases. One or two of these kids won't work out and will be gone by next fall. That's my guess. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. Who can handle the scheme? Who can pick it up? Who can take on the leadership role and diagnose things and move guys around? Linebacker's hard. They've got to do all those things. That's not easy, brother. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see a few guys for Wisconsin by the end of spring ball. You're like, okay, it's obvious. They're constantly talking. Fickell's talking about he's going to play. The kids that don't get talked about, not as much. That's just the nature of it. So I think it's the new norm, as you kind of mentioned. Mm-hmm. And at Wisconsin, with all the packages, linebackers harder anyway. So they got to have more bullets in the gun, if you will. And it was a smart move. They had a long way to go. They didn't get enough of the guys they probably wanted. Let's be honest, out of the high school ranks. They're bored, which they'll never really talk about. The guys they wanted, I bet the top 5, they didn't sniff. It'd be my guess. Mm-hmm. Nationally. It's just the way it is. That's why you talked about Tackett being a guy like everybody wanted him last year. He'll be the most physically gifted linebacker on the roster. How quickly he plays, I don't know. But that's why, again, got to take some numbers. You could see Wisconsin take a jump up statistically this next year, and part of it is they'll actually be able to run their scheme more. You got to be really, really athletic to run their scheme. They go a little bit smaller, but just beat teams with speed. On what Cincinnati did, they murdered people up front with all their complexity and their athleticism. They're trying to duplicate that. It's just going to take a little while.
Well, and yeah, a lot of coaches, Luke Fickell has talked about this too. He has said specifically, I don't want to build through the portal. I want to build through the high school ranks.
Right.
Is that realistic, though, to be that black and white in this era cultural? Because even Luke Fickell, and granted, he's taken over a program, so he's had to do more work bringing in his guys. But through 2 portal off seasons, he's brought in 30 transfers. It doesn't feel like the actions are matching up necessarily. And I'm not crushing Luke Fickell on this. I'm not calling him disingenuous, but it feels like you can't just say I'm going to build through the high school ranks anymore.
What he's talking about is ideally what he's doing is realistic. Mm-hmm. Look, it's not a friendly thing. They're not going to get the kids that Ohio State wants out of the high school ranks very often. They're not. But if they can do this for a little while, it'll slowly go down. Think of it this way. Florida State at one time was just a juggernaut in recruiting. Mm-hmm. Bowden, etc. Okay? That waned. When Jimbo left, they had some bad coaching decisions. Norvell is slowly getting that back. I just checked, and I don't know if it's even up to date. There are like 12 or 13 portal guys already. And they're coming off a 13-0 year and a really good recruiting class. Mm-hmm. Their class is top 10. I know he wouldn't admit it, but Fickell would trade right now with Florida State recruiting classes. It's not even a question. And they still have 13 guys. You have to do it because I think, and myself included here, not just Luke, kids will not wait. Period. If they're not projecting themselves to start as a sophomore, there's a high percentage chance, regardless of position. It's dumb, but kids leave, and you're almost forced to do it. You can't play in the Big Ten, especially with Oregon and Washington coming in. Not, USC and UCLA, we'll see, but those 2 programs got a lot of talent. You can't play with freshmen and sophomores. you're going to get stomped. Then you still got to play Penn State, Ohio State, etc. That's not going to go well. I think he's been forced to do it more than he'd like, because he's not getting as many kids as he probably wants. I think he kind of expected that. But I think it's just the number of kids that leave. Think about it. Go look for any Wisconsin fan watching this or listening to this. Go look and see how many kids they've lost. You don't have the depth that you used to. And this is a redshirt and build program. All the Big Ten West is historically. But kids just don't wait as long. They may have a little bit more, but Fickell and any other program in the country, even Alabama, even Georgia, even Florida State, it's not hard to recruit to those schools. They're taking portal kids more than they would like. Right now, Alabama's bleeding transfers.
Mm-hmm.
I know Saban is once in a lifetime. I get it. But they just hired a guy that's one of the best coaches in the country. He's got a 90% winning percentage. And they're still losing guys.
Right.
Kids will not wait. Got to use portal.
Let me ask you this, and it kind of came up as you're talking about it. I'm curious on your take on it. Of the Pac-12 schools coming in, you mentioned obviously Oregon, Washington, tons of talent, obviously USC, UCLA coming in as well. Which of those, in your opinion, is the scariest for the Big Ten?
Oh, it's not even close. It's Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
It's because they spend a gazillion on NIL. They didn't get a transfer portal quarterback. They got 2 of the top 5. It's because NIL. I don't think he's a very good game day coach. I think he's kind of proven that. But they're going to out-talent 9 out of the 12 teams they play walking in the door every year. That's a good problem to have. He's going to get better as a coach. And now he's going to have a 60-year senior quarterback, and who I thought 2 years ago was the number 1 quarterback in the country and number 1 player overall coming on as the backup in Dante Moore. He's going to be okay at Oregon.
Which of those 4 schools do you think struggles the most coming to the Big Ten?
Probably UCLA. Historically, the state of California does not spend much on their state schools for funding, for coaches, this and that. If there's any coaching shift at all as a coordinator, like they just lost their coordinator across town to SC, will they really go out and spend to get somebody to replace par for par? Yeah, I'm not buying it. The last 30 years is not – UCLA, if they had the right kind of support, it's a top 10 team. It's easy. It's a state school in a beautiful place on the north side of L.A., how hard could it be? But they don't support their school. So I think they could be okay to start, but when Chip leaves, that could be a precipitous fall off. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that gives me a little worry. Washington, that's a very prideful school. Their boosters will keep them involved, and they just hired Fish. I mean, he's a really good coach, a guy from Arizona.
Yeah.
And USC is, I mean, I know he's not a great coach. He's overrated, but he's still going to score. They'll be 7-5, 8-4. I don't think he'll survive at SC in the Big Ten. I really don't. I think they'll get bludgeoned some. Wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin, Iowa, schools like that gave them a lot of fits because they're more physical.
Yeah, I had that same thought with USC, and I'm not just trying to steal a thunder there. It feels like they might be in for a bit of a rude awakening. Kind of a –
no doubt.
Yeah, they're not going to match up really well with some teams that they're not used to.
The 2 areas they used to be dominant in, when McKay was there in the 60s and 70s, they became the program, O-line and D-line. The 2 areas they struggle at right now, O-line and D-line. Where is the Big Ten really good? Up front. Good luck. If you have any injuries, even if you win a game, you go through attrition playing Power 4 football. It's Power 4, by the way, now, because there is no Pac-12 anymore. And they're going to get beat up. Let's see how USC does games 9, 10, 11, and 12 each year. And especially when it's snowing and raining, like the weather that I'm in Indiana right now. They won't play like they play Notre Dame every year. They will not play them beyond the middle of October in South Bend because of the weather. They don't get that option in the Big Ten.
Yeah, good luck.
When they go to Ann Arbor or East Lansing or Madison and it's November 2nd, good luck.
Good luck. Have fun. There's a great clip years ago of actually Miami. Miami was playing Wisconsin. I think it was the Capital One Bowl. It was like 50 degrees, 45 degrees, and the Miami players were like huddled on the sideline. Like it
doesn't work, bro. Doesn't work.
All right, let's take a quick break. I wanted to get into this segment, but next segment, we're talking about a big-time 2025 cornerback prospect that the Badgers are in on. I think he might be a safety cornerback hybrid, but I'm going to get Brian's take on that. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains our number one place that we go to for all of our sportsbook needs, all of our sports betting needs. The football season is definitely winding down, but it's not over. And Badger fans, Wisconsin guys, Green Bay Packer fans, You all know I'm a Niners fan. We're meeting next Saturday. That early line I'm seeing is 9.5. This is a great time. If you want to get in on it, have some fun with it. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Parlays, live same game parlays, teasers, futures, everything is there for all the sports that are going on. And it is a great time to bet NFL playoffs. Obviously, college basketball rolling on as well. NBA, it's all there on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. All right, let's get Brian in. Brian, I want to talk to you about Jamir Scott, 2025 cornerback out of Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. Kind of a nice little tie-in, I'm sure, there with Luke Fickell's ties into kind of some of those areas. What do you like about Jamir Scott's game when you watch him on film?
He's got size, he's got length, and he likes to play downhill and break on the football or tackle. The second play on his film, he picks the guy up and pretty much slams him with a forearm tackle. The only concern I have, he's not always playing against the greatest comp. He's not playing in like the league across the board on his schedule. And then the other part, this is just one of those things. I need to see him go against some elite kids in one-on-one. Right now, I think he's a better fit at safety. Fickell has always taken bigger corners that I might not play there, but he runs his defense differently than I would if I was in his boat. Obviously, he gets the credit. He's the head coach of Wisconsin, not me. But at the same time, this kid just likes to play forward. When kids like to play forward at corner, the ball goes over their head a lot. So that gives me a little bit of nervousness. But he's dominating kids that he should. Some of the film I'm watching him run against, I'm like, okay, this kid has no chance. He's going to get smoked here. So the kid dominates when he should. Now, how do you use him? Do you play him at nickel? I think that would be the ideal spot for him. It's the hardest spot now on the field other than the obvious quarterback because tight end's in front of you, then a 160-pound slot. Screen against the tight end, you got to get off. Talk to some guys that are really freaking good, and they hate it when I bring up, what do you do when you got a tight end in front of you? There is no good answer for that. So you got to be a dog because that guy's a lot bigger than you. It's not going to go well. It takes a special kind of guy. Fickell found those dudes when he was with the Bearcats. If you have a great nickel, it changes your defense. It changes your blitz package, changes how you play the run, everything. Maybe that's a fit for him. He's got that mentality. But I know they're going to try him at corner. You always got to try a guy corner if you can. It's the hardest spot on the field, just pure physically to play because either you can run with him or not. But I don't know if he can play that or not, especially in man. I don't think he's a man corner.
Yeah, a lot of his clips are he is playing kind of that slot, that nickel spot. I thought that was interesting because a lot of times you see that 6-foot kid in high school that he's playing
100%.
the boundary. And this one's a little more inside. It's funny. We didn't talk about this before the show, so it's funny that you said safety. I texted my buddy before the show, and I'm like, I'm watching this film. He feels like a safety to me because of the way he hits, how physical he is. I think he could be good in the box. He could really come up and physically tackle running backs, take on some blockers, handle some tight ends to some degree. But I think at the very least, he offers versatility for a defense with his size and his kind of power in the box.
I think he's a very unique player that they can play games with.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I mean. Cincinnati, when Fickell was there, would line up with something and then shift. They'd use the same package on the next play on 2nd and 7, second to whatever, completely different, but with the same guys. He's the kind of kid I could see fitting into that. He fits that mold. They might even play him on 3rd and 10 as an inside linebacker, as like your dime linebacker, and blitz him or just put him on the running back. He's a very unique player in that regard. Again, I don't think he's a burner, so I don't think he's playing cover one to the field. Okay, that's as hard as it gets. You're going against a guy that can fly. You better be able to be a sprinter. I don't think he's that, but he's fast enough to play in the secondary. Now, how many different spots does Fickell play with? This is where he's good. This is why he makes a lot of money. So let him figure it out. And you keep taking kids like that. Again, this is the same concept as bringing in the transfers at linebacker that you mentioned. You want as many bullets in the gun as possible. How it falls, you just go to spring ball. You coach them up. Summer, you do the same thing, and you just continue to climb. Wisconsin's gotten better in the last year, and with like the transfer portal, they've helped themselves. But eventually, we've talked about this a lot. If you're going to beat Ohio State, if you're going to beat Michigan, you got to get the high school kids that are versatile, they can really run. This is a kid that gives you a chance at that.
Yeah, again, we have talked about cornerbacks and receivers and defensive linemen more than just about.
That's it. That's the
Yeah.
only spots Wisconsin needs help.
Just about every show, which I love. Does this player? He's a different type of player, right? Than Agard and Lucas for sure. Those guys are
100%.
different types of people. But is he in that type of tier in terms of a prospect and a recruit, in your opinion?
I don't think I would rank him quite as high as like Agard because he's played against more elite comp, at least of what I saw on film. And it's not necessarily talent, it's the position. If you have the ability to play cover one corner, you're a unique football player. God blessed you differently to be able to turn and run, stop and change direction, lean forward, but run the other. Like all these little nuances that corner coaches teach are not natural to the human body. They're not. A friend of mine is Coach Cox. He's the guy for the Under Armour camps that coaches the DBs. He's the crazy guy that goes out there and gets them hyped up to go through all the drills to get them warmed up. If you're off by an inch, he goes crazy. He's that military guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him about some of this stuff. There's only, even at the Under Armour camp, off the record stuff, there'll be like 3 or 4 guys he talks about. Of the elite kids, it is hard to play freaking corner. So, yeah, I would go with Agard because out of all of them, he's been coached. He's got the athleticism and change of direction. You can play him in some cover one. This kid's a different guy at a spot, though, that's really hard. I would start him at nickel because he's got physicality. I love those kids. I think Wisconsin fans will, and I will bet you money that at the very least that he's a kid, when he gets to college, he's going to be on special teams right away. Physicality from DBs, man, never goes out of style.
No, that's for sure. All right, he is Brian Smith, our recruiting insider, as always, at FBScout_Florida. Give him a follow. Brian, in the Midwest, try to stay warm, my friend. I know that's not your natural nesting ground.
Yeah, but I'm ready to nest back down south. Can't wait for my plane to take off tomorrow night.
Love it, man. Well, safe travels. Brian, as always, thank you for stopping by. For everyone tuning into the show, thank you so much for listening. A bunch more coming up this week, so stay tuned to Locked On Badgers on Wisconsin, and we'll talk later.